Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second episode of Reactionary Opinions. It's good to be here. Dylan's joining us. Russell's joining us. It's going to be a lot of fun. I would like to send a shout out to our new subscribers on our YouTube channel and our Facebook, people that have liked our Facebook page. Go ahead and like it.
It's quite impressive. 44 subscribers in 1 week. Yay!
It's not 44. It's 5 subscribers and 42 views.
42 views. Sorry, 42 views in 1 week. In a matter of days, we're cutting it.
Yeah, that only means that we'll have to make another 200 videos before we get to 1,000 subscribers.
No, it won't be happening.
Yeah. Rome was not built in a day, guys, and I gotta say, that's about 40. That's about 35 more views than anything else I've ever uploaded to.
Yeah, same.
I'm all
so I'd like to send a shout out. We did get some really good positive feedback or private messages on the Reactionary Opinions Facebook page, which was quite nice. A lot of people telling us how we're doing the Lord's work and all of that, which is good. So it's Tuesday, the 26th of March, and we are recording the second episode. So in this week's episode, we're going to be speaking about something that is, or it seems to be on the tongue of everyone, or on the lips of everyone, the purple cow, not blue, the purple cow, ZACP, the Capitalist Party of South Africa. They've made some serious waves on social media, I must say, guys. They're actually getting some serious press. I think they have a very interesting campaign. So it seems as if they're waging meme jihadi or something.
Yeah, and they've got a couple of helpers, inadvertent helpers along the way, because from what I've been hearing on Twitter, that Pumzile van Dam from the DA and Roman and them have been going at it for like 2 or 3 days now. And it's just basically, Twitter has exploded. I mean, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I wonder about politicians. They do the strangest things sometimes, in that they give free advertising to a political opponent. It's quite bizarre.
Well, I think what I think is quite bizarre as well is the party literally only launched 10 days ago, and it's all over the news and stuff.
Tremendous. They're memeing their way right to the top. So I'm
So it's quite interesting. You see, I actually listened to. I don't know if you guys saw the debate, the Sunday evening debate on Ronaldo, where Roman was actually on. Roman Kabanak was actually on Ronaldo's show, and basically what they've done is, they're saying they don't have any money. So what they've actually done is they've just sort of, got oaks that are amped by the ideas that the party are pushing, and have told them, look, you can do what you want to do with our logo, with our ideas and stuff, and just go out there and wage meme war. Which is, look, I got to give it to them. If you want to create a narrative in today's world, that's exactly how you actually do it.
Yeah, look, you've got to be outrageous. You have to actually, if you want the platform, it is kind of, you can't actually be there all nice and everything. You have to actually storm the platform, and that's what they've essentially done. They've gone out there and they've obviously Roman and a couple of the others have had a cult Twitter following for a few years now. So Roman cut his teeth originally as an infamous Twitter troll. So I think he knows social media pretty well.
Yeah, the famous Twitter troll, Roman Kabanak. Yeah. Is it Kabanak or Kabanak? Kabanak.
I say Kabanak.
Kabanak,
yeah. Roman Kabanak.
Why is it not Roman, but it's Roman? I suppose it's French, I guess. I don't know.
It must just be my American coming through because I always insisted on Cabernac, but
Yeah, Cabernac.
yeah, like Cabernac, you know.
Yeah, and it must be his French coming through. Oh, you know,
It's
all of that.
Roman.
Yeah, Roman.
I gotta go
So
back.
I would before we jump into the topics of today, I would like to remind our listeners or our watchers and stuff to please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go ahead and hit the bell icon as well so that you can get notifications whenever we upload a new video. We are going to be doing these videos once a week. They'll go up intermittently once a week. We haven't yet nailed down an exact time when the videos will actually go up, but they are going to be going up once a week. So please go ahead and subscribe, and remember to hit that bell icon to get the notifications. Gosh, I sound just like Ronaldo now. What are we also going to be looking at in the podcast today, and we're going to be discussing it in a little bit more detail. I think Dylan's actually gone and made quite some comprehensive notes with regards to that. We're going to be looking at whether those we're going to be looking at the ZACP 10 sort of, they call them their principles. They don't say they have a manifesto. It's called their principles, which is where basically the principles that the 10 members of the ZACP would like to see this country run. And we're going to be actually seeing if those principles are actually, if not reactionary at all, and we're going to be seeing how or even if they would actually work in a country like South Africa, where we're never able to agree on consensus, which is a tricky one, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be something that's going to come up quite often in the talk. So without further ado, D-Dog, you want to go ahead and run us through the ZACP's initial first sort of point, or what do they call it? Their principle.
I think, yeah. Yeah, no, tremendous. Yes, I shall. So, as Scott already said, what I did was I went through the 10 principles. I'm just going to run through the 10 of them real quick right now, just bullet point. First principle is liberty. Second principle is equality, individual rights before group rights. Third principle, tolerance and absolute protection of freedom of expression. Fourth, private property rights protected by law. Fifth, the rule of law. Sixth, right to work. Seventh, the right to be secure on your own property and to defend yourself against intruders. Eighth, free markets, international free trade based on enlightened self-interest. Ninth, firearms and self-defense. And 10, fraternity, spontaneous order and civil society. So for our purposes, we will, I think, first sort of stick with the first few ones. The main ideas, the sort of fundamental guiding principles: equality, liberty, equality, and tolerance. And then move on to the economic stuff at the end.
Yeah.
So first, liberty, what they wrote, some of the highlighted bullet points under that is liberty is the primary political value of the country. Two, have lots of different values. And there was some more stuff that they had in there, but then continues. But when it comes to what to do politically, we should always be interested in increasing individual freedom. Now,
You're breaking up a bit there, Dylan.
Okay.
Breaking up a bit there. Can you just go over that again? Sorry.
Okay, it says we have lots of different values, but when it comes to what we do politically, it should be to increase individual freedom. That's what I had. So the first point, liberty is a primary political value of the country. As I recall, that was a declarative statement. It wasn't asking, is liberty the primary political value of the country? So my first question is, well, is it? You know,
it's like they're turning liberty into an ideology.
Yeah. So my first thought is, okay, you know, maybe for some people it is, you know, the primary political value.
I don't know. Dylan. I don't know, Russell, are you hearing Dylan breaking up a lot, or is it only on my side?
I can hear what he's saying. It's not breaking up a lot, but I can hear what he's saying.
Oh, okay. The signal's a bit iffy.
Okay, but in any case, so my first question was, of course, is this actually true? I mean, liberty is the primarily political value of a lot of people, no doubt, but I would say that at this point in South Africa, probably more of a minority position. More people probably value equality or opportunity more than liberty itself. So, and maybe this is just sort of what they would like to see, be sort of become the primary political value of the country. But yeah, I can't speak to that. But right off the bat, it seems like it's kind of a jump.
I don't think that I mean, you can call me a skeptic or whatever it is, but I don't think that liberty is the primary. What's the word? I think liberty is the primary. People don't all understand what liberty means. You understand what? It's not really a consensus in South Africa. There's not one standard idea of what liberty is.
No, certainly not. And the second,
I agree with you. I agree with you guys there.
Yeah, and the second point was we have lots of different values, but when it comes to what to do politically, it should be increase in individual freedom. So, okay, I mean, where's the line on that? So at what point is, it's a little vague on what individual freedom means. If it means like, an old school sort of, American Republican, meaning colonial Republican idea of individual freedom, that comes, of course, with a lot of responsibility attached to it. If that just means, being able to, just whack off in a restaurant or something, that is technically individual freedom, but is that the sort of thing that should go out in society? These are questions that aren't really brought up. And I kind of get it, maybe shorten stuff for the for your principles, but these beg some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think like you see, this all boils down to consensus, and I think there are people that that will be okay, that would be okay in South Africa sacrificing some of their liberties and stuff for something. You understand? It's not. You understand, like they would sacrifice their freedom to be safe, for example.
Yeah. Correct.
Their freedom of, they'd sacrifice their freedom of speech, even, just so that they could be safe. In it's not a liberty the way that I think the ZACP thinks about liberty is not necessarily a broad consensus in South Africa.
No. It is not. I remember reading a poll a little while ago. I can't remember exactly. It was an opinion poll in South Africa, and I seem to remember it was well over half of the people polled were quite comfortable sacrificing their democratic privileges in South Africa, provided it meant better employment, better safety, less crime. That's
correct.
Like,
correct. Oh. But I mean, the thing is, that's not a uniquely South African thing. If you look at, if you read about what happened in 1930s Germany, when the National Socialists came to power, people were very, very happy to give up the freedoms. Basically, people justified the police state so that they could get out of the position that they were in. And I think what happened was the people were saying, well, if these guys are doing things that we don't like, but then they're also fixing a lot of the stuff that we want to have fixed and sorted out, we have to take the rough with the smooth. and that is how people, that is how how can I put it? It's not right. I don't say it's right, but that is how I would say history has recorded how people have approached this sort of topic, and that's how it's played itself out. It's never played itself out where when there's been when it came to a little bit of safety, security, and prosperity, for the cost of freedom, people give up freedom.
Yeah,
or they give up liberty. History has always played itself, well, not always, but very often. What comes to mind immediately, I mean, even today, right now in China, because of China's tumultuous past with all its dynasties and all its changes, and they can come about very sudden and destabilizing situations, the Chinese give up everything basically for stability.
Yeah. No, they've always had a very strong respect for hierarchy in China, you know, whether it was forced on them or not.
Correct.
Sure. Well, it's the same here in South Africa.
Yeah. No, the people really like they're like, oh, this is the ruling elite. Okay, you know, I would like the trains to run on time, but
yeah. You see, this is the thing: is what are they going to weigh it up against? What are they going to weigh up their freedoms against? You know, you can't, because you see, the whole thing is that I think the guys that started the ZACP, what's most important to them is absolute freedom, and I don't think that absolute freedom is absolutely important to even the majority of South Africa.
No.
I think the majority of South, and you see, this is the thing is what I get what they're trying to do is they're trying to change the consensus, or they're trying to change the narrative, which is a good thing. But to make a statement like liberty is sort of an inherent thing in South Africa is false.
No, I mean, and it's one of those. Have you guys? There's for anyone listening, one of the questionable assumptions about the United States in its early days was that it was a propositional nation. The United States was never a propositional nation. It was an Anglo nation with traditions and customs that already existed. And although some of the founding fathers did have some, different ideas, more or less their positions were in line with the traditions and respected the way of doing things that the inhabitants of what is now the United States were accustomed to and liked. These principles, for South Africa specifically, are they're propositional principles.
Yeah.
They would like to be seen. They don't seem to me to be necessarily in line with what people think.
Correct.
So, yeah. So, Russell, do you want to add anything?
No, pretty much said what I'll do. I'll just say that it almost seems like by saying liberty is the primary political value of our country, it's almost like you're forcing it down people's throats.
Exactly.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. I mean, and within the South African context, I'm game for more liberty compared to what we have now, but I'm not sure if that's what even half of the people in this country want. So
yeah, exactly. It's got to come from the bottom up.
Yeah. So, and also there's,
Cool. Next point.
Yeah. So equality, individual rights before group activity. So that's number 2. The individual is more important than the collective. We must not sacrifice the interest of the individuals for the common good. And affirmative action harms meritocracy. So this last point, affirmative action undermines meritocracy. That's basically seen, that's almost self-evident, right? If the criteria by which people are advanced in society is not meritocratic, then that's what affirmative action is. They're like, merit isn't enough to get where we want to go, so we're just gonna funnel people through in order to level the playing field. But this, so no problem there. But the individual is more important than the collective. This kind of my take on this is, and I used to sort of kind of hold this opinion myself, but there seems to be a narrow sort of assumption that the collective, you have the individual over here, the collective over here, and these two are somehow at odds. There's a symphonia, there should be a harmony. Why not both and scenario? So there are two forces here, you know, the individual and the collective, and they should be in harmony. They're not, it's one of those things where you can't really, I mean, try as you might, you know, you cannot separate the individual from the collective to which he belongs. It's just not how it works.
So in other words, the two, the individual and the collective are not at war with each other. They are not, there's no animosity between them. And yeah, they don't need to be completely independent of that. You can have a symphony of a collective and the individual. Yeah,
and you know, in Orthodox Christianity, there's this idea. It's from the Greek. It's called symphonia, which is the harmony and the joining forces of the individual and the collective. Yes, you know, you have your eternal soul to worry about, but you're also part of a people group. You also have a language. You also have a culture, and you know, within that sphere, you operate within that sphere as an individual, but you have relations outside that. Relations which are due to birth, relations which are due to custom, relations which are due to inheritance. And you know, to assume, I mean, there is no atomized individual, and the ones that you could, you know, plausibly argue that exist, they're very few and far between.
Dylan, I think in their defense, I think there is, they did make a statement. I can't remember who said it. It might have been their chairman, Canthan Pillay, or it might have been Roman, that said something in the lines of, you know, if you give the individual rights, then all groups have rights anyway. So the collective has rights anyway. So if you give an individual rights, then the groups automatically by default have rights, or the collective has rights, the same rights.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, if he was using the example, I remember I think Roman was, I think on the Ronaldo show, he gave the example of, he said, you know, we don't need to have specifically gay rights, we just need to give everybody rights, and then everybody's got rights. You don't need to have special interests or anything like that.
That's exactly the point, Russell, is they don't want to be giving special interest rights to certain sort of protected groups and all of that.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the thing is, the idea is that if you, then people are free to associate and then form their own collectives after that. Once they take their individual rights, and then they can go and form a collective with their individual rights, but they don't have their collective recognized as group rights. They only maintain their individual rights.
Precisely. But I mean, you got to understand also is that, you know, a lot of these principles and stuff, I'm not going to call it a manifesto because they don't call it a manifesto, but a lot of these principles that they came up with, and this is kind of what Ronaldo said as well, and I'm going to have to agree with him. It kind of sounds like they almost sort of hashed this stuff together, and sort of, you know, it's just like, basically what it is, they looked up, you know, what is a liberal and a libertarian's most important things, and they went with it, you know. So by saying things like you know,
libertarianism,
by saying things like equality, individual rights before group rights, how vague is that? It's pretty vague, but they need to elaborate. And they
Well-
do, and they.
Well, I think also one of the reasons why they might have kept all this very simple and just like one-liners and bullet points is simply to create discussion, get people asking the questions, you know, and then they can get into everybody's headspace that way.
Yeah, no, it's good messaging. That's
Yeah.
for sure. And I guess sort of my thinking sort of historically and current affairs and stuff. I'm wondering, in a society like South Africa, is it, or anywhere else for that matter, is preserving, maintaining individual rights ahead of group rights, is that even possible? In a political sense, the only areas I could think with multicultural countries where you are able to sort of have this this balanced, non-fractious existence between multiple groups is somewhere like Switzerland, where there's very clear, delineated cultural linguistic areas, and within these enclaves, they have a very high degree of autonomy. In my sort of estimation, trying to maintain individual rights ahead of group rights in a highly diverse society always sort of tends to end up having the loudest minority groups or special interest groups be able to strong arm the state into granting them specific privileges at the expense of other groups. So
yeah, look, I mean, the thing is, that's always the risk, I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's always the risk. I mean, the reason why places like Switzerland work in that sense is because it's incredibly decentralized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything is done at the local level. I even heard that in Switzerland, if they've got a bit of federal government there, and if the federal government needs any money or needs to raise extra sort of funds, they've actually got to go and ask the cantons for money.
Yeah. So it's sort of like the old American early republic system.
Yeah, it was never known as the United States. It was these United States.
Yeah, it's the old Articles of Confederation model. Yeah. They're like, Virginia, we'd like you to pay, but
can I just suggest something? You want to just turn your camera off and we can check if it works better.
Yeah, sure. Let me try that. All right, how this?
Yeah. Much better. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Russell?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Yeah, it probably works better like this because it's I don't know. Internet's obviously overcast and crappy out tonight.
Yeah, it's your internet.
Either that or Russell has shitty stuff.
It's your internet. Your internet's always rubbish.
I don't know what you guys got. I got a 10 meg line over here, fiber, man. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Scott hasn't hooked up his fiber connection yet.
I'll get there. Don't worry.
No problem, man.
So do you think we sort of scrap the equality, individual rights before group rights, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
One last thing. It says, just on that, we will not sacrifice interests of individuals for the common good. Common community interest. So what I wrote here is my interest is not defined, and of course that'll vary from person to person. I said could be anything basically, an individual's own interest, but if it is at odds with the majority of my community's interest, then by definition it could be considered against the common good. So if I live in a community where me pursuing what I want to do, like I want to sell drugs or whatever, and it's in my individual interest to do so, but it could very well be actually against the common good of where I live. So
yeah, exactly.
Things must be kept in symphony. It must be like an orchestra playing. It must be there must be the common good and the individual need to work together, not against each other.
Yeah, no, and they're, I think they're sort of right in the sense that they are largely fairly spontaneous or naturally arising, institutions that people form and stuff, either by birth or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you really can't pull the individual out of the collective, and every group is going to have their own ideas of what's good and what they will and will not tolerate. All right, moving on to tolerance.
Yeah, an absolute protection of freedom of expression. Oh dear Lord, give me strength.
Isn't this what we talked about last week? It sounds familiar. All right, so
it is, yeah, more or less.
Tolerance.
It's quite ironic that we're talking about it a week later. It's because I've been thinking a lot about what we spoke about in last week's podcast. And freedom of speech or this is so important in and all of that. It's so important.
You're breaking up a little bit, Scott. So what I heard you was you're talking about freedom of speech.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Hello?
Okay, basically what
Are we losing you, Scott?
It's like I can't. I don't know. I don't know why it's so slow.
It's your internet.
Well, it is overcast and loud out tonight. So anyway, carry on, Dylan.
It's okay. No problem, man. But no, like as you were saying, this does sort of tie into with what we were talking about last week, and tolerance, absolute protection of freedom of expression. So again, keyword here, freedom of expression, not freedom of speech. So this seems like kind of a fairly absolutist freedom of speech and expression, as it says. So what it wrote here was tolerance means one should not interfere with things of which one disapproves.
Yes.
Yeah, literally pulled from there. I remember I'm like, all right, I'm going to pull this one exactly word for word. Second, a society cannot develop unless every citizen has the right to express any opinion, even if other citizens find such views to be offensive. And then I wrote in the brackets right next to it, this is how you get degeneracy. So
yeah, but you're 100%. You're 100% correct. You can't. Tolerance basically, in a nutshell, means that if he's something of
hello, Scott.
To be tolerated.
Yeah, Scott, we're losing you, bud.
Never mind. Carry on.
Okay, but I think if I heard you right, basically you were saying, yeah, this more or less brings up some problems if you have unlimited free expression. So comments, basically, yeah, I mean, it's just. So first off, a society cannot develop unless every citizen has the right to express any opinion. That right there, I think, is false. Just because I can think off the top of my head of many, many great societies, large civilizations, important ones, rich societies too, that have not allowed for unlimited free expression, which were able to develop. So as we were talking about last week, the United States in the early Republic period, there was, absolutely, tons of decency laws and restrictions on how people could express themselves. And this did not prevent them from advancing either politically, either in terms of wealth or importance on the global stage. Just didn't.
And also another thing about every citizen has the right to express any opinion, even if another citizen finds such views to be offensive. Yeah, look, that's what I get at is that it's basically those with the loudest, biggest mouths are still going to dominate the sphere here. They're still going to drown out. They're going to express their opinions, the people that actually want to live in peace and want to actually respect everybody are the ones that are going to say less. They're going to have less opinions, less expression, and the ones that actually want to cause mayhem are actually going to be the ones expressing their opinion the whole time and expressing their whatever that may be, you know. So generally speaking, you'll find, I'm saying at its nth degree, you would get a society that will say, for instance, your persons that all of a sudden believe that, you know, permissiveness is an expression, right? Most people don't believe that. They believe that, you know, you can do what you do behind closed doors, but, you know, the other person might believe that I can do all my hideous acts and that sort of thing in public, and that's an expression. But you get what I'm saying. I mean, that's why I say you can easily get, like Dylan's right here, you can get to a degeneracy state there if you, and usually it's the people who respect everybody's opinions, but use those opinions moderately. In other words, they withhold those opinions as much as possible. The ones that are going to cause all the problems in society are the ones with the opinions that just want to express themselves the whole time, and they're actually it's almost like it's a kind of a thing where their truth will get out there and overwhelm, just from it being spoken the whole time, overwhelm the rest of the ordinary people that don't actually believe that.
Correct.
Yeah. And, you know, in most societies, it seems that there's always most people, like you're saying, Russell, you know, they just kind of go along to get along.
Correct.
Just leave me alone, you know. That sort of conservative impulse that most people have. I just want to be left alone to do things the way that I've been doing them, and, you know, just don't get too crazy. And what always seems to happen is in, you know, democracies and republics like South Africa and the United States is some loud demagogue gets hold of the bullhorn and then inevitably pulls the rest of society along with them.
Correct. That's exactly what happens. And most people, you know, the ones that have all the opinions, their opinions might be very strong, you know, but eventually it's a horrible thing. But if one of the reasons why we're in the position where we are is that the good ordinary people have done nothing over the last 20, 30 years, all right?
Nothing.
And that's why we are, because we haven't got our truth out there. We haven't actually been as violent in our truth, you know, purposeful, you know.
Well, Russell, you're 100% correct there, because can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear fine.
Okay, so you're 100% correct over there, because what it's like you mentioned last week is that society now views good things as bad and bad things as good.
Exactly.
So, so saying things like absolute freedom of expression and stuff is like opening on the society that we live in today. It's like opening Pandora's box, and just, you know, all kinds of depravity will be allowed to sort of come out. But I don't know.
Like I say, I mean, that is what it can definitely get to that. I mean, the thing is, like Dylan was saying, is it was only America had all these official freedoms of speech and expression in their First Amendment for almost 170 odd years before all the guys got hold of the bullhorn in the 60s and basically just stole the platform and steamrolled it over all the good ordinary Americans and just dominated the public spaces after that.
Yeah, and that's the thing a lot of people don't realize, you know, that in the United States for many years there was actual fairly stringent restrictions on expression.
Correct.
Right up until the 60s, you know, and this is well over, you know, 100-year period where, you know, you really couldn't say, you know, whatever you wanted. And the federal government, and of course it was largely handled at the state level, you know, but that's But that is just because that the system of the United States was and still is federal in this sense. All criminal law is handled pretty much at the state level.
Correct.
So legal in one state, provided it's not explicitly not constitutional, is not legal in another state. That's why I can, buy a gun in Alaska in 15 minutes, but I have to, register my gun in New York State, or I can only get a 10-round magazine for my AR-15 in California. So there's very, very big differences in terms of state to state, in terms of legal structure, and also, like I've been saying, pretty stringent restrictions on how people were able to express themselves for a long time, and that didn't stop them from advancing at all, really. If by advancing you mean material wealth and prosperity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in summary of that point number 3, tolerance and absolute protection of freedom of expression, I'd say cool, but not sustainable.
Yeah, and also it's a value without value. You know what I mean? It's not almost it's that pesky liberalism at work again. So I mean,
everybody wants to be. I look, like I say, I mean, it's not. Sometimes the problem with liberalism is it's always. Just for the sake of being liberal, we must engage in a race to the bottom,
Yeah, and it's tolerance and absolute protection of freedom of expression. I mean, it's a value with no values. It's like our value is that we're valueless, and
correct.
We should be able to do whatever you want, be as crazy as you want, and
Well, that's the thing, Dylan, is that this for me, out of their 10 principles, this point number 3 was the one that really struck me a bit. I mean, if they had labeled it as sort of championing free speech or whatever it is, but I mean the way that this is worded is incredibly liberal.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, and as we've talked. As we mentioned, we're not going to stay on this forever, but as we talked about last week, whether they want this to be true or not, absolute freedom of expression has never been and never will be, I would say, a sustainable or even long-standing tradition anywhere. It just hasn't. And like right now in the South African context, there are things we simply, can't say or face legal restrictions or have private repercussions for what we say. And as time goes on, we're likely to see more restrictions.
Yeah, Dylan, that's an interesting point there, because here's my theory on this this point number 3. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. We need to move on from point number 3, but I'd just like to point something out. Let's say, is this where it says tolerance means one should not interfere with things of which one disapproves? Is that their sort of description of what it is?
Yeah, no, I literally pulled that from.
Good Lord, that is shocking. So let's put that into practice in a situation. Let's say, for example, in a very sort of Muslim community here in Cape Town, somewhere in the Cape Flats, for example, there's they want to do a gay parade or whatever it is. Okay, it's the Muslims' freedom of expression to oppose that, and it's the gays' freedom of expression to have it. So which side do you take? How do you figure this out? You're just going to cause massive amounts of animosity between each other instead of respecting that Muslim community, and telling the gay dudes, okay, listen, go and do it somewhere else out of respect for the Muslim community. But then the gay dudes can say, hey, wait, hang on a second, screw you. It's our absolute freedom of expression to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, and it always boils down to this, like, hey, we pay tax, our money goes to fund these roads, we have the right to be here, and it just causes a whole bunch of problems.
It's just not sustainable. Absolutely not sustainable. Okay, cool. So can we move on to point number 4?
Yeah, cool.
So private property rights protected by law. It says difference between prosperity and poverty is property. So with the sentiment coming from this, I totally agree. Sanctity of private property, able to protect your property rights, have legal and have reasonable legal recourse for damages done or to settle disputes. But the difference between prosperity and poverty is property. So wealth, this gets sort of into an idea of wealth. So if they mean like having in your constitution, and not just, and more than that, having a respected and reliable way that your property can be protected and disputes adjudicated, absolutely. But wealth is a whole lot more than just property. Like, as it currently stands in South Africa, this may change. And so if the state nationalizes every goddamn thing in the country, then of course this might not no longer be the case. But the reason most South Africans are poor is not because they don't have enough property. The reason most South Africans are poor is because they lack skills or certain cultural traits or whatever that sort of has them where they are the way they are. They have incredibly poor education in most areas, and a lot of things that kind of undermine their ability to provide value. The reason most South Africans are poor is because they don't provide a whole lot of value.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the thing is, how can I put it? Wealth is not always, like what you said, Dylan, it's not always a property. It can be property, but it's not always. Like you said, wealth is also skills, intelligence, and character. But wealth is also, what it comes down to, wealth is the ability to produce. You have to be in a position to sell whatever you have to the marketplace. If you've got nothing to sell to the market, it's kind of pointless. Then you are going to be poor.
Exactly.
It's simple as that. It's not like. And it doesn't even matter. You can even have, if you just got nothing to sell, you've got nothing to sell. It's just simple as that.
Absolutely true. And I was just thinking, it's funny. I was actually thinking about this the other day about all the people asking for jobs and whatnot, and I'm like, what do you have that most people want? I mean, like, what can you provide? And I'm like, there's only a certain amount of maids or janitors or cooks and that this country needs at any given time. I mean, it just is. So obviously, if you lower the levels of barriers of entry to the market, that'll be helpful for some of the marginal employees who are the marginal would-be workers, right? So, the ones who are sort of edged out by minimum wages or whatever, that will help them. But for most people, though, I would suspect that a lot of them will, they still won't have a lot to offer, and they will still be unemployed. Unless it's a sort of feast or famine, or I'm sorry, not feast or famine, unless it's a sort of, produce or die sort of scenario, So one of the things you have in the rest of sub-Saharan Africa is a lot of, poor people, but because there's no, social grants to sustain them, they just resort to, street peddling, and the amount of small business in sub-Saharan Africa is actually quite high outside of South Africa. So, a lot of them would have to work for themselves, but I think if you have the sort of welfare state in South Africa as it now exists, perpetuated into the future with strong property rights, I don't think you're really going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Now, people need to be equipped to produce goods and services. That's what makes people wealthy.
Yeah. No.
Simple as that. Simple as that. I mean, yeah, sure. An asset, like say for a piece of farmland, might be able to help you produce more assets, but more produce or more product. But at the end of the day, it's not necessarily that. You've just got to meet the demands of somebody to be able to create something. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have much. I don't know if I have any property here. I mean,
I don't have any property either. I've got nothing. All I've got is my ability to sell my skills to the marketplace.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I rent where I live. I'm paying off the car. I might eventually own that, But aside from that,
Russell, your skills and that sort of thing. I mean, most arguments, or the argument they can use, would be that is your sort of, I guess, your intellectual property. But now if they, I don't know, but then how the hell are they gonna take it away from you? They can't
because it's between my 2 ears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, they can't expropriate my
human capital. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's one of the fascinating things. A little bit of a side note here. It would seem, and I stand to be corrected here, that a lot of people, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, seem to see wealth as a resource-based thing, right? Which is highly peculiar. You even saw it in that movie Wakanda, where the reason why Wakanda was such an amazing, wealthy place is because it had this special resource.
That wasn't a movie, Russell. The movie's name wasn't Wakanda. It was Black Panther, man.
Oh yeah, well, Black Panther. But I mean, the thing is, Wakanda has become bigger than Black Panther.
Yeah.
But the reason why the reason why Wakanda was so powerful and strong, it had this amazing resource. But that's total rubbish. That the only way you've got an amazing resource is if you can actually sell it to somebody, and if somebody else wants to buy it. In and of itself, a resource is nothing.
Yeah.
It's like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not a wealthy country because it cannot produce its own demand internally.
Mm-hmm. That's
it's not a wealthy country.
Only all the people. You can only sell so much oil to people in Saudi Arabia. You got to get into that stuff outside. Yeah.
It's not like the US that's got a massive internal demand that can create. Basically, the demand is there, created internally for whatever products it produces. Now that's proper sustainable. That's a proper wealthy country.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So if that, on that definition of the difference between prosperity and poverty is property, geez, then we must be absolutely living in poverty then, I guess, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I should be myself and the guys down the road here. We should be I should be equal then with the guys living in Dunoon and Khayelitsha and that.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know a goddamn thing.
I don't know anything either.
Exactly.
I only own paper. That's it. Just paper investments.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So I guess, in summation on this point, private property, protection of property rights, the difference between prosperity and poverty is property. It's a good start, but at the end of the day, insufficient, particularly in South Africa.
Yeah. Point number 5, rule of law. I want to touch on this rule of law because it's been itching me as well the whole time and stuff. Now, obviously, rule of law is straightforward, and it says the state cannot do whatever it wants to do when it wants to. Obviously, I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with that. clear legal structure and law, and all people are equal before the law. Okay, I know Dylan wants to talk about that third little pinpoint over there, but what I want to talk about is they mentioned something that did come up. Was they mentioned things like approaching or trying the Portugal style of legalizing drugs and all of that sort of thing. Look, I'm not 100% against that, but I think it's going to be particularly tricky to do that, because the other thing is a question that an Oak asked on last night's podcast with Roman and Ronaldo. Is the question the guy asked is, how are you going to get rid of gangsterism? So Ramon's answer was, we are going to get rid of the incentives to be a gangster, which is a good answer. Okay, so he says if you remove or if you make drugs legal, then there's no reason for people to be gangsters, because their incentive has been removed. Okay. But I honestly don't think within those communities and stuff, those gangsters and stuff that are involved in the drug trades and stuff, I don't think their only incentive is a monetary incentive, to be honest.
No, it's not.
I think their main incentive is the intimidation, the intimidation factor. So they don't care. They like being gangsters. They're not. It's not just about the selling drugs and making money and that sort of thing. It's about the intimidation and the power and all of that.
Yeah, no, that's really what it is. I mean, for anyone listening, I spend actually a lot of time in Mitchell's Plain, the Cape Flats. That's where my in-laws are from. Just a week ago, there was a guy who lived a block opposite from where my wife's from, where my in-laws still stay. And in the middle of the night, he's just sort of standing, outside of his house, as he's wont to do, across from a tuck shop. And then some guys drive by, shoot him in the back, and they shoot him in the face 3 times, and he's dead. And that's not because I think it was actually because he was part of a gang, and then he tried to get out, and then they killed him.
Yeah,
so,
you see, this is the thing: is I don't think that you're going to fix a problem like a drug problem and a crime problem in the Cape Flats and stuff by merely removing the incentive. I don't think that's the way how you combat gangsterism. Those communities are begging for people, they're begging for even government to go into those communities and help them because they're desperate.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. They didn't kill this guy over money or anything, and it's most of the people that I've talked to. I mean, I know a lot of people who were either in gangs or know people who are in gangs, and a lot of the people who join these sorts of organizations, the majority of them, come from very tumultuous backgrounds, very insecure backgrounds. So there's a lot of people don't become gangsters because they want money. People become gangsters because they're broken individuals.
Yeah, 100%.
So, I mean, yeah, you'll sort of cut down on the amount of some of the drug trade a little bit, maybe, but they'll go into something else. So, like, also in Mitchell's Plain, in Tafelsucht, one of the problems they have over there isn't, I mean, of course they have problems with drugs, but one of the problems they actually have there is basically old highwayman style robbery with basically the gangs in Tafelsucht are running a protection racket on the taxis.
Exactly.
So they're literally like, all right, well, times are a little lean, Tick isn't selling as well as it should, so we need to make more money. So what do? They strong arm the taxi drivers in the area, and they literally make them pay tax, in quotes, protection money, so they can
the old school racketeering.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So it's like, okay, I mean, now they're not selling drugs, but maybe they're putting more resources into strong arming, small business.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the thing is, okay, well, look, these guys, like I said, we can we might be able to get rid of the drug problem. You know, there might be a lot fewer addicts around, which would be a good thing. You know, we would still make some improvement by not having any drugs around, or fewer drugs around, or fewer addicts around. It'll improve the communities, but you know, you're still going to have gangsterism because they're going to change to paddlerman smuggling, or they're going to change over to racketeering, or they're going to change over to a grand theft auto, or they're going to, you know, you know, so gangs are not necessarily just about drugs. You know, it's other things as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
It's human. They could even get into. I don't know how big it is at the moment, but they could up the ante on human trafficking, all sorts of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I think it's economic incentives. You know, this is economic thinking. This isn't, gangs are not an economic problem, and you're not going to fix it with an economic solution.
No.
I guess that's sort of my take on it at the end of the day.
And you wanted to speak about point number 3, or that little bullet point number 3, all people are equal under the or before the law.
So I guess this sort of goes back to the, you know, de facto de jure, right? So, you know, on paper, people can be legal or can be equal under the law, but of course we know that's never the case, right? That's why, you know, Hillary Clinton's not in jail, or Jacob Zuma.
Exactly.
So it's rules for thee, not for me is always how it ends up going out, you know. And furthermore, equality before, and I just don't see how you get around that. Also, there's also been, you know, inequality before the law is also, you know, a situation where, again, lots of societies have managed to do quite well. So, again, in the American example, only about 20% of males in the United States at the founding of the Republic actually had the legal right to vote on federal issues. So that's not, you know, half of the population. It's even within the white male franchise at the time, there were severe restrictions on who could and couldn't vote. And that was inequality before the law, but it actually worked pretty good.
Yeah, well, look, like I say, they were the franchise probably were limited to those that had the most vested interest. It's kind of like being the shareholder in your local stake. If you've already, say now you're already a merchant person, you've already got property, you employ people, all this sort of thing, you've got more to lose. You know, so obviously they said that person has got more vested value in his vote because he's got more to lose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where that's my understanding of what a qualified franchise is that you can't actually have that type of, in a sense, when it comes to putting down the vote, all right, if those with the most to lose are higher stakeholders. In other words, it's kind of like you're all shareholders, but some people own more shares. They've got the higher value. They've got a higher vested interest in the well-being of a particular operation or company.
Yeah. Some people are more equal than others. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look. I mean, the thing is, how can you be all equal if one's got more to lose?
Yeah. No. Exactly. And furthermore, why should, if you're the guy with his money or his property on the line, why should someone who doesn't have, that sort of writing as a liability, why should they be able to decide what's done with it, And that was sort of the mindset at the time. It's because, I mean, this was, a pre-income tax society. So basically all the taxes that were paid were tariffs and land taxes, basically.
Correct.
And so naturally, and the thinking, the common sense thinking at the time was, okay, well, the people who don't pay into the system shouldn't decide, what is done with it, because now, they get a say in what, Farmer Joe gets to do with his land, So, and there's also been explicit, inequality before the law. I think, the rule of law no doubt you got to have that, because I mean, if the law isn't enforced and clear and easy to understand, then you just get all sorts of problems.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you get what we have now in South Africa, where people just straight up don't respect the law. They don't.
Correct.
And but there's been instances of monarchies throughout history, and even, like I said, early Republican era of America, where there was explicit inequality before the law that nevertheless resulted in flourishing and prosperous dynamic societies.
One of the things I'd like to just add here, we're talking equality, rule of law, we're talking it very much from a political point of view. But obviously, obviously we are, I'm sure, in complete agreement that, a rule of law has also got to do with things like how the state engages, issues warrants of arrest, issues search and seizure processes, due process, all those sorts of, that's also part of rule of law. And there you can have equality, you know what I mean? So in other words, the right to a fair trial, the right to, basically somebody cannot, freedom from arbitrary arrest, freedom from arbitrary search and seizure, all these sorts of things that are, you can't just arrest somebody,
No, absolutely, yeah. No, and I think that aspect of it, where the law can't be, there's good reason to believe that the law is going to be uniformly enforced. That is extremely important.
Correct.
But you're standing within that legal system. You don't necessarily have to be on the same level as the next guy.
No, you don't.
So just so long as you know where you stand, and it's, there's no surprises, and you can count on things to operate as they are written down.
Absolutely.
So Dylan, I think we've done up to rule number 5, or up to point number 5. But I think the rest of the other 5 points are very much sort of economical and all of that, and they kind of makes sense to me. Do you want to just sort of brush through them and work on your things, because we've already been going for over an hour? And I
totally agree. And yeah, like you're saying, Scott, most of the 6 through 10 seem to be pretty, just sort of common sense, boilerplate, free market stuff. So right to work, free association employment, absolutely. That's that's classic Thomas Sowell right there. That's just good economics. The less restrictions on legal employment, the better. Number 7, right to be secure on your own property and to defend yourself against intruders. Common sense. In the United States, there's restrictions on certain states on when you can shoot someone, or when you can't if they're on your property. But in states where you can, so you are legally permitted to kill someone who is on your property if you have reasonable cause to be afraid. They call that the castle doctrine.
Yeah, I think that's also. I think that doesn't that also come from the Old English common law as well?
It is Old English common law, 100%.
And again, there's Old English common law right there. So again, another society which was not democratic, which nevertheless respected the individual's right to protect, hearth and home. So yeah, castle doctrine, all for it. The more of it we get, the better. So and not option. Point number 8, free markets and international free trade based on enlightened self-interest.
My free markets.
Yeah, well, look, I actually remember what Roman said on Ronaldo's show about this. He said free markets and international trade based on enlightened self-interest. So in other words, he gave the example of, we're going to trade freely with all countries, no import tariffs or duties, all right, both ways. We're not going to get involved in political disputes around who you do business with. And he gave the example of Israel. If South Africa needs, if Israel makes the best desalination plants and technologies in the world, we're going to trade with them no matter what. We don't really care what anything else, because it's in our interest. We're not interested in any sort of fundamentalism and ideologies regarding who you trade with and who you don't. So if it's in our interest as a country to trade with Israel, because they, when it comes to the technology involved with dry weather, low rainfall, agriculture, and desalination, then we're going to do it. We're not really, because it's what we need.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, there's nothing. I can't find anything. I can't fault that. It's
yeah, that's what Roman said. It could be a lot of other things, but that was the one thing I remember that it actually stood out to me, though, what he said there.
No, and I totally agree with that. And I guess just the only thing, free markets, national free trade, international free trade. Sorry, guys, I'm a little parched. But in order to entirely capture the benefits of free trade, assuming if you think about this in a crudely economic terms and don't have any respect for cultures or nations, you would actually get a much bigger return with labor mobility. So to reap the full benefits of free trade requires free labor mobility. So if that's the party, then you might have some problems with social cohesion and
correct, because essentially labor can be exported, is what you're saying, and imported. So in other words, you're not going to import and export services or products. You're literally going to import and export between countries labor. So the entirely free markets would mean if entirely free. In other words, I can go and just rock up if I want to, just walk into the United Kingdom or the USA and go find a job there if I want to. They're importing my labor,
right?
Essentially.
Yeah. So and that brings up a bunch of other questions. Like I'm sure we could have a whole talk on immigration someday.
Yeah, I know, but I do know that I do know quite outright that Roman, his idea is that they shouldn't. He believes in like a stateless society.
Yeah.
Where he has said it on other shows before, because the state rather have a stateless society and free movement of people, because the state just oppresses people.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know, and international free trade. I'm still for it. I'm not saying I'm against it, but I just see certain complications that have to be dealt with. So like in really dirt poor countries, which have zero skills, nobody wants to buy their stuff internally, are like dumping free clothes on certain sub-Saharan African countries and being like, all right, cool. Well, now you can't get textiles up and running because you're getting free clothes. Now, of course, the answer to that from a free market perspective would be, all right, cool. Well, that just frees them up to do something else. I'm like, all right, but what are their options? Like agricultural work? I don't know. So anyways, free trade, great idea. I think there's a lot more restrictions on it than there needs to be. But it's just one of those creative disruptions of the market that you just kind of have to deal with and try to manage.
I do think it'll work itself out though, eventually. The only way to stop it from working itself out is to place restrictions on it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Or fortunately for the free market, yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think on the whole, I totally agree with this. More trade, more better, by and large.
So point number 9, I don't have a problem with that because that's basically part of our slogan. So I'm all good for that,
Yeah. The only thing is, I have a good chuckle here. Think of a headline which would give the ZACP some traction with regarding to it says here, safe use of firearms should be taught to high school learners. I got a headline which will get great traction that maybe ZACP wants to get out there.
Oh yeah,
ZACP promotes child soldiers.
yeah.
You know, that could be. I think that could be. I think what they should do is get one of the journalists or something just to write some kind of a thing on there, just to get them traction, and like free advertising on, you know, and then they come and give a counter argument. You know how it goes. Create a headline, an outrageous headline, and then it entices a response from ZACP, and then people are talking about ZACP.
Interesting thing is, Dylan, at when I was in high school and stuff, they actually had shooting and stuff at school as well. We were taught how to shoot at school as well.
Yes, I remember we had a escape skit.
Yeah.
No.
We shot with .22s.
.22 rifles, yeah, small little rifles. We had a little shooting range in the school, and with like tunnels that you'd lie in, and then you'd shoot the stuff.
I remember those days, but I think from when I was like in standard 8 or 9, once the new dispensation came in, that all that firing and firearms at school and all that sort of thing went away.
Then it just became the place where all the rubbishers went to go and smoke.
Yeah, it all became that. I don't think that shooting range was never used again for any other purpose
other than smoking. Yeah.
Yeah, all the rubbish is there.
No, I guess it's much better to have shooting at school than school shootings, you know.
yeah, I think that's you can pitch that idea to the schools on the Cape Flats.
Yeah.
Shooting at schools, not school shootings. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think it's an interesting idea. You know, you basically train up a whole generation to be firearm competent. Make militia of the kids, you know. That's
Make child soldiers.
But honestly, I mean, I get what they mean by that saying of fire should be taught to high school learners. It's not like they saying, kids should be able to, you know, rock up with guns and on, like strapped to the teeth and stuff. I mean, that's what they're saying is that you'd get an oak like old Gideon Uber in there, and he'd go and he'd like teach oaks how to shoot and teach them about guns and all that. Do little presentations and do like road shows. Like it would be like a school road show, like like in the old days when the Oaks used to come and do yo-yos at school and stuff. It'll be now like with guns.
Yeah. Well, look, just include a gun, the gun owner South Africa as a contributor.
Yeah. Fantastic. Problem solved. Excellent. Point number 10, D-Dog.
And then we have another sad instance of state patronage going around. Yes. I'm joking. No, that's a great idea. So fraternity, spontaneous order, and civil society. People, through voluntary interaction, create the rules by which people can live. People do not need a state to do this. We believe that most social problems can be more effectively dealt with through such voluntary organizations like the family, like religious institutions, like cultural organizations, NGOs, because they have knowledge about the individuals they are dealing with. So with most of this, I largely agree. I think social institutions have a huge role to play in helping alleviate a lot of social ills. The problem that I see right now is a lot of that's crowded out by state intervention.
Correct,
and undermined by it. So such things as the welfare state, I think, make a lot of these institutions, wrongly, in most cases, redundant in a lot of people's minds, right?
Yeah, so, it could be as well that fraternity, the spontaneous order, and civil society, that is what they essentially want to replace the welfare state with.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what they want to do. I don't see a problem with that.
No, this seems all pretty of all the 10, this is the one that it makes pretty much good sense. It just basically just got to watch it over time. That eventually, yeah, but the state can start interfering in these organizations and regulating and all that sort of thing. But that's a matter that can get discussed when that happens. But the general rule that that civil society is better doing this than the state is, in my view, 100% correct.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with point number 10. Really, I don't see an issue with that spontaneous order and civil society. So, folks, we've been going for a good hour and almost 20 minutes now. So I want to do a I want to start talking. So we've gone through their points and their principles, as they call them. And I look, honestly, I don't see much of a problem. Where I do see, what I do find strange is, like we mentioned earlier on, how come they've just sort of come out, 8 or 9 weeks before the elections, and it just doesn't make any sense for me. I don't know why they're doing that. And I don't think, contrary to the meme warriors out there, I don't think that the ZACP is even going to. I mean, look, they can be exceptional if they get 5,000 votes, but I don't even think they're going to get even close to that.
What I think is their thought process. I'm just thinking about this from a marketing standpoint. If you're going to start a small little upstart party, which isn't going to get a lot of votes anyways, it might be better to do it actually closer to the election. Mm-hmm. So you're fresh, you're on people's minds before the election, instead of coming out like a year ago and then nobody cares about you when it comes around to election time.
Sure. So then it's basically you hitting the iron, or hitting the iron while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
Striking the iron when it's hot. Yeah. Well, sometimes you need to make the iron hot by striking it.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, look, like I say, I mean, I'm happy that that capitalist ZACP exists. All right. Whether they coming out as a political party now, I'm happy that they're at least getting into people's headspace so that people can start asking some actual questions and not just towing along with these big parties, these big cumbersome parties like the DA and the ANC and whatever. And people are just, as long as they just get into people's headspace and get people thinking about things, I think that is important. I was hoping that they would be more along the lines of a movement than a political party. People seem to have more connection to a movement than a political party, and I just thought there's other ways to do it as well. But I hope that they kind of become more like a movement-based thing after the election, so they can still get their ideas out there. Because you do need sometimes you need every little bit of help you can get, and where we're in agreement with the ZACP, we need to get their ideas into the marketplace as well. So that's my opinion on it.
No, I agree.
I just feel like from a their strategy, I think, would work maybe a bit better probably a lot better in a place like, America, provided America had a, proportional parliamentary system, which we don't. But if where you have the internet saturation, you have a higher degree of tech literacy, and you can kind of, meme your way to the top. I just don't see that as being a viable strategy in South Africa, unfortunately. Most people, I mean, my wife she doesn't know who they are, and my family doesn't know who they are, and they're not plugged in the internet, and neither are millions and millions of other South Africans. So I think a lot of this, is just sort of unfortunately a middle-class flight of fancy.
What did Lamberti say? He said they'll get 5,000 votes. This is basically the Renegade Report and Ramon's Twitter followers.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Yeah,
it's like their little cult going. They'll get what they'll get.
But that's pretty much all that they'll get, and that's I mean, look, it's. But then again, I mean, it's not just. Remember, Russell, it's not just the Renegade Report, or it's not just Ramon Kavanagh. It's 10 Oaks and 10, so-called capitalists that are, doing this, and they've all got their own spheres and stuff. But regardless, it's how long now is it? It's 7.5 weeks now, more or less, until the elections. And I mean, come on now. What are you trying to achieve? But I get what they want to do. What they want to see is they're pulling the same sort of moves as the Cape Party, where they want to try and get a seat in Parliament or something in Parliament or some sort of representation, and they just want to get in there and cause untold shit, which is good. I like that.
Well, at least there would be in that way, something different.
Yeah.
Which I support. At least they're different. I'll give them that.
Yeah. So for closing statements, Dylan, you want to just give a quick minute or something for closing statements?
Yeah, one-liner. Yeah, no, I'm happy the South African Capitalist Party exists. It's a shame that there's not enough of a internet and tech footprint here in the country. Otherwise, they might, like I said, meme their way to the top. So I think in a more developed, educated country, maybe they'd have more success. But yeah, I mean, I guess I wish them luck. I'm glad most of these ideas are getting out there, and I hope they go further. I mean, regardless of however we might think about some of the more liberal leanings of the party, I think we can all agree that the more capitalism in South Africa as it stands, the better. There's a lot of restrictions, and I'm happy to see these ideas get out there, and I wish them success. So that's my shtick.
Great.
Go.
Okay, look, I'm happy that ZACP exists. I'm happy that they decided to put out those 10 points. There's kind of like 10 punchy, simple sort of points to get people's attention. I'm just happy that the ideas are out there. It's being promoted. I agree with Dylan. It might not get the traction that we would like simply because we're in the wrong country for it. But I'm very happy nonetheless. You have to actually start somewhere. I'm happy that the ideas are if you can just get them into the public sphere. I would advise maybe even post-election trying to set up get to the youngsters at the universities just to get the ideas out there. I'm happy that the ideas are there, but I'm not holding out much political hope, but I'm just very happy that we've got the ideas in the marketplace.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you guys 100%. I'm also glad such a thing as the ZACP, and I'm glad that the guys have actually sort of finally done it and that sort of thing. And I get what they're doing, because it's the only way to mobilize is to actually mobilize. It's better than sort of sitting behind your computer and screaming into a screen for the rest of your life. The only way that you can actually make a physical change is by, I guess, making a physical change, and that's what they're trying to do. And I wish them all the success. Am I going to vote? No. Sorry, Ramon. I don't know if I'm that convinced to vote for you guys yet, but I generally take a very long time to decide who I'm going to vote for. 7.5 weeks to ponder over that. But yeah, I'm glad that the guys are around. I appreciate what they're doing, and they are setting out to change the narrative, which is exactly what we need in this country.
Yeah.
Whether it's through a political party, whether it's through a movement, whatever it is, we don't know what could spawn from this. Movements could come from this.
Hey, Scott, did you break up? Did you hear
Scott.
myself?
Can you
broke
hear me?
up there for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, you broke up for a second.
I'm saying it's can you hear me now?
You're breaking
kind
up.
Okay.
Yeah. More.
Guys,
Yeah. Hello?
Hello?
yeah, can you? Yeah.
I can now.
Can you hear me? Okay, fine. So basically what I was saying is that the most important thing for the ZACP is to get their ideas out there, no matter how they do it, whether it's through the media, whether it's through a political party, whether it's being a movement, or even if it's going to be a meme jihad. We need to get this story out there.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, if nothing else, hopefully, the election cycle, it'll be sort of like Ron Paulian in that sort of sense. They're not going to win, but hopefully they can change some minds along the way.
Correct.
Some rabble rousing, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, because that's how you win elections, is you influence people or you change their minds and stuff. So, if eventually, let's hope that that's what happens. Anyway, lads, it's been lovely chatting. I'm going to don't hang up. I know it's our first time broadcasting live, so don't hang up. I'm going to stop the broadcasting, which basically stops the recording. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks to our listeners. Remember to subscribe to Reactionary Opinions, like our Facebook page. Hey, Russell, I was actually thinking, Russell.
Yes.
I was actually thinking, either one of you, I don't know how good you are at the whole Twitter thing, but I absolutely hate it. So we need to do some sort of we've actually been sent messages asking if we are going to be having a Twitter presence. I don't know if one of you guys want to take that on.
Yeah, look, I look to be honest with you, to get some sort of traction, it's not bad idea. It's a good idea, but I'd rather just. I was on Twitter a lot, 7 or 8. That's how I knew about. That's how I first found out about Roman Kabanek, was about 7 or 8 years ago.
Oh, hectic.
And I just sometimes Twitter is just a little bit. For me, it's a little bit like toxic. I don't want to get everybody's like, because you actually have to be a little bit of a troll. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll look into it. I was thinking about that, and I think long term it help the show. It certainly can't hurt to have more social media presence, and it seems like a lot more people on Twitter these days, anyways. And it's kind of the arena for political commentary. There's more sort of interesting stuff along that lines happening. So
there's no doubt about that. Like Twitter is the place to be for that. That's where all the battles go down.
Yeah. So
maybe I'll try and get us a blue check mark. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Fantastic. So guys, in closing, I want to say thanks everyone for listening. Remember to like our Facebook page, subscribe to our channel, click the bell icon for new videos. We are going to be doing a new video next week. Not quite sure about the topic that we're going to be discussing, but thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, Scott.
Cheers, everyone.
Oh.